really four major steps to taking a project from raw dirt or from concept to completion. One of those steps, first step, I consider to be project development. Next step is project planning. Next step is ironing out the resources or determining the resources that are going to go into the project and the actual execution, and then the actual support part of the project. In other words, making sure that it's going smoothly during the construction steps. So those are the four steps as I see them, and I just kind of want to touch on each one of them just a little bit. In that project development phase, I can't possibly underscore enough, I can't possibly emphasize enough the importance of that particular step. Project development is where we evaluate the piece of land. It's where we evaluate the utilities that are coming into the piece of land, the electricity, the gas, cable, or data. It's where we evaluate how the water is coming into the project, or whether or not a well is going to be needed. It's the stage where we're talking about, are we going to connect to a city sewer? Are we going to have to build a septic on the job site? It's an absolutely critical step. It dictates so many things down the road, and we just think it's so important to really start working hand in hand with the builder at that project development step. Huge benefits to a homeowner of the early planning or the early project development phase. If you're working with a professional builder, you're going to get professional, you're going to get seasoned advice on things like utilities. You're going to get seasoned advice on things like house placement. You're going to get good professional advice on things like where a septic should be placed. You'll always get good advice on where you should do your test holes for soil, for the quality of soils on the property. We're certainly going to be able to tell you what's going to be the best orientation for your house. If you're thinking about solar, what's the best orientation for putting solar on the roof? And where do you want that house to really face? Are you looking to direct that house or point that house at a particular mountain peak, or do you want a particular sun exposure? A professional builder is going to help you with things like that. There are so many nuances that a professional builder is going to bring into the fold or bring into the project if you engage them early. The other thing about project development that's critical is organizing the project right from the start. We know how to organize every aspect of that project. The filing system that we've created and that we've implemented with project after project after project over the years, the filing system is the key organizational piece that helps the project right from the start, helps it start right and helps it stay right. If you've got 60 bids, 60 different bids that you have to analyze, and let's say that for each of the trades that are involved in those, you get 3 bids, and in some cases perhaps 4, maybe just 2, but the bottom line is 60 times 2 times 3 times 4. You got so many pieces of paper, you got a blizzard of paper coming at you. Unless you have a good way of organizing that, it's just going to be so overwhelming. We've done this enough. We've designed systems that help our projects be extremely well organized. That's part of the project development phase, is just getting everything off on the right foot. What I'm talking about here is certainly relevant to our turnkey projects. It's how we manage those turnkey projects internally. It's how we plan and prepare and implement and execute those projects internally. But for an owner builder, for somebody who hasn't built a custom home before, for somebody who's good at project management in general, but maybe hasn't seen the pieces that are the project management pieces that are relevant to a custom home, these systems are absolutely so crucial to get the project started right and to keep the project moving right. One of the biggest contributions that we're making in this project development phase is helping this client figure out where the house is going to sit on the property. how this driveway, which is 275, 300 feet long, how is this driveway going to come up and approach the house? Where is it going to circle around to the house so that when you're looking at the house from that road, you don't see just a bunch of garage doors. The garage is hidden in behind the house, and this driveway has to approach the house appropriately so that you circle around the house. And there's more to it than meets the eye. It's not just coming up this slope, making a left turn and then making a right turn. It's calculating exactly how we want to come up that slope, what we want to see as we're coming up the slope. There's so much nuance to this. And actually there's one more piece of this, of the project development function that I want to talk about. And that is, some of these trees that surround this house are they're absolute spectacular specimens. We don't find these kinds of ponderosa trees in Colorado that much. Some of them must be near 100 years old. And so it's absolutely critical, and our homeowner agreed with this right off the bat. It's absolutely critical that we do everything we can to preserve these trees. And developing the plans for this house and developing the overall plan for this piece of property, that had to take into account the preservation of these trees and making sure that the way we sited the house, the way we ultimately placed the house on this property, kept some of these absolute spectacular tree specimens intact. The planning phase is where we're literally going to sit down and figure out, okay, now that we have a house plan developed, now that things are on paper, now that we know what the house is going to look like, now we can sit down and figure out who are we going to engage, what resources are going to be needed to get this thing done, and what kind of timetable is going to make sense for demolition, in this case, for excavation, for foundation building, etc. That's that planning phase where we're really starting to get down into the nitty-gritty. We're going to figure out, okay, what exactly does the appliance package look like? What's the window package going to be? Have we decided what kind of shingles we're going to put on the roof, or what kind of roofing materials we're going to put on? Have we decided what the insulation materials are going to be? Those are all critical pieces of that planning phase. Obviously, your builder has to be involved there, but that's where the homeowner is really going to start, whether it's a turnkey project or a owner-builder project. That's where the homeowner is really going to start to express themselves, particularly with things like cabinets, countertops, windows, shingle color or roofing color, exterior finishes, like what kind of stone are we going to put on the outside of the house? Is there going to be brick or some other kind of masonry on the outside of the house, stucco, etc.? That's where the homeowner is really going to get in there and say, this is what I really want it to look like. Obviously, that's where a building professional is going to say, oh, well, if this is the kind of roof that you want, then we need to plan ahead for that kind of roof. We need to make sure that our trusses are designed to carry the weight of that kind of roof. Or as another example, if these are the kind of windows that you want, then here's what it's going to look like on the inside. Here's the kind of trim that you're going to have on the inside of those windows, or the kind of millwork that you're going to have on the inside of those windows. A professional builder is really going to be there is going to be critical in helping you walk through those decisions on the finishes and such. Okay, so the next part of this process is figuring out what resources need to be brought to bear to make the project come to fruition. And that can be as detailed as figuring out, in this case, how are we going to do demolition? What kind of testing do we have to do before demolition so we can do demolition legally and safely? It's just deciding what kind of resources have to be brought to bear in order to make this work. And that includes things like figuring out what are the particular requirements of this county, or in some cases, what are the particular requirements of the city that we're working in? What do they require in order to do a thorough plan review and issue the plans? has to do with, in this case, let's just, stand right here for a second, checking this well and figuring out, is this well going to be sufficient for the new 5-bedroom house that's going to be built here? Do we have sufficient flow? Finding out how old the well is, finding out from the State Department of Natural Resources, how long has that well been there? What was the flow when the well was originally dug or originally drilled? And then making whatever adjustments are necessary, if they are, to get that well active again. Or if we find out that it's not sufficient, then what? Then we have to figure out, get a well drilling company in here to drill a new well. The resource phase is where you and your builder are going to sit down and decide who needs to be involved in order to bring your idea to fruition. What trade contractors, what city agencies, what municipal agencies, what county agencies are going to be involved, what utility agencies are going to be involved. It's just a question of putting all those, identifying what all those pieces are, and then starting to put them all together. Here's why this piece is, all of these pieces, but this piece in particular is so important, okay? With each trade contractor, with each supplier, it's with cities, counties, and utility agencies, it is so critical to understand lead times and to understand how those things change. For example, a year ago, 18 months ago, if I needed a plumber to do work on my house, I'd have to schedule that plumber about 10 weeks in advance. That's how busy everybody was. Interest rates changed, the market changed a little bit. Now if I want a plumber, I might be able to call and have him or her show up in 2 weeks. Understanding those kinds of lead times, understanding the importance of advanced scheduling, I've talked about this before, stretching the time horizon to make sure that all of these resources fit into place and fall into place just the way they're supposed to, that requires the expertise of a seasoned builder. 2 years ago, when we wanted to order a garage door, we probably had a lead time of somewhere between 12 and 15 weeks. Today, if we order a garage door, we've probably got a lead time of about 3. When we're building this new house and our order of windows comes, in a perfect world, those windows arrive, for example, those windows will arrive on Monday and our window person will start installing them on Tuesday. And by Friday, all of those brand new windows are installed in the house. No window breakage, no problem with windows sitting in the weather unprotected. They arrive and they go in just like that. And we want that to happen, literally, we want that to happen with all of the supplies. There's 2 huge advantages to that, right? Number one is the product arrives pristine and it's installed pristine. No breakage, no damage, no concerns about things missing or whatever. That's number one. Number two has to do with just-in-time inventory, which is it's a critical business concept. We don't want to pay for an item several weeks in advance of when we're going to use it. That has an impact on a construction loan. You don't want to pay interest on a product and have it sit in your garage for 5 weeks. We want that product to arrive, to pay for that product, and then have that product immediately go into use. So it's just critical to plan this correctly. The other piece of this is managing waste. A good builder understands the use of every resource on the job site and understands that when we order lumber to frame the house, or when we order hardware to frame the house, or supplies, any supplies that go into the house, it is necessary to over-order by a small margin. So once the house is framed, almost every single project we find, okay, we've got 25 or 30 of these 2x4s that have to go back and 10 sheets of this oriented strand board that have to go back, or whatever. It's important. A seasoned builder is going to be able to walk through and understand the importance of okay, let's stockpile those materials there. Let's protect them from the weather. Let's move this hardware over here, and because it's not going to be used anymore, let's move this hardware over here, stockpile it, so that when we call our supplier, one load, the supplier comes out, picks it all up, takes it back, and issues the credit. We've been to job sites. I personally have been to job sites where I can walk through and see at the end of the framing portion, or the end of the framing component, I can see $2,000 or $3,000 worth of materials sitting there ready to be returned. Understanding that, understanding how important those resources are, not just the hardware and the lumber, but understanding the cash resources, understanding that and understanding how to make best use of it, that's such a critical piece. Okay, so we've talked about project development, the very early stage. We've talked about planning, just, starting to get the pieces together, starting to draw out the roadmap, starting to understand the time horizon. We've talked about resources and the importance of knowing the right resources and being able to bring those resources together and implement when the time comes, and implement at the right time. And we've talked about actual implementation, in other words, putting the battle plan into place. We've talked about all of those pieces. Just a quick summary is just making sure that all of those things are going to take place, making sure that the professional builder that you're talking to has a vivid picture as part of his or her process, has a vivid picture of those 4 distinct components. We'd love the opportunity to visit with you, preferably as early on as possible, but we'd love the opportunity to visit with you very early on and talk about the subtleties of project development, talk about the subtleties of planning, talk about the subtleties of putting the right resources together, and talking about mapping out the implementation of the project. We would absolutely love the opportunity to visit with you the minute you start thinking about your new custom home, so that we can get you started on the right path and kind of draw you a map through the maze. If you'd like to know more about HomeWrights, please check out homewrights.com or give us a call.